You're tripping over one setback after another. You find yourself aimlessly scrolling and just wasting your time through your phone or through video games, and you know it's a waste of time. But at the same time, it kind of feels like you have to. There's a lot happening and you don't really know where to start, and you just want to have some kind of good feeling, and you know that at the very least this distracts from what's happening, or perhaps it numbs it a little bit, or maybe it gives you a little bit of comfort in this sea of meaninglessness. Perhaps you feel hopeless. I've been through quite a few of these, and it's not something that I wear like a medal, but in some ways it is fortunate because it means that I can give you what I learned so that you don't have to harrow through it all yourself. Learn from my mistakes. So, I'm Dr. Nabil, longtime professor of vicious cycles, downward spirals, and ruts. Not really, but I have figured out 3 very practical concepts that I've been using myself, and I found them to be most helpful. You don't have to use any of them. If, let's say, you found even one or half of one useful, then I would have served my purpose, and that makes me very happy. So, here we go. 3 concepts to help you get out of a rut. The first one, marginal gains. All that it is, in a nutshell, is one little thing, but a few of those here and there, you add it together, and it's pretty big. A single grain of sand is not really much, nor is a drop of water. But if you drop an ocean on someone, it's going to leave a mark. That's exactly what this is. Where it might not be obvious or substantial, perhaps, if you can do anything at all, perhaps doing something is better than doing nothing. The trick is, do what you're willing to do. Now, I do have to clarify, because there's a lot of things that you could physically do. If you haven't done it already, you could be going to a gym and have a mesocycle. Did that scare you? Because that scared me when I first heard it. I have no idea what that was at the time, and it's quite intimidating. You want something that's simple, and if it's too complicated or if it seems too big of a task and there's so much homework that you have to do for it, it's a lot less likely that you're going to be able to stick to it. But you can do one thing which you could forget about. Just do one thing. Not something that you could physically do. You could go to the gym, but what about maybe a packet of Maltesers on the floor? Empty, of course. You don't want to be wasting anything. Just do that one thing, and that's it. Be proud of that. Don't beat yourself up over the fact that all you could do was a tiny little thing. Because let's reword that. What you did was improve your circumstances objectively by, let's say, 1%. And that's still better than yesterday. Do it enough times, and it will accumulate. Now, of course, the single thing is not going to change much directly, but it is indirect. If you do 1% a day, after a year, 365%, that's pretty damn good. And you won't be the same person anymore. I think that's still better of an improvement than none. Wouldn't you agree? So, there is this story about marginal gains. I don't wish to make this video too long, so I'll give you a very brief rundown of what happened. Perhaps it is interesting, and it will act as an example, and you can see how this really comes into play. 1907, 2008, almost 100 years, the British cycling team has only ever really won 1 gold medal at that time. Kind of sad, really. Enter Dave Brailsford. Coach. He took little improvements that you might not think would be substantial. But yeah, of course, if you only did one of those things, it probably wouldn't be the difference between a gold medal. But a bunch. What did he do? Well, he painted the inside of the van white so he could see dust, because that affects the wear and tear and perhaps weight and perhaps the speed. He did bike shorts to keep the muscles at an optimum temperature, measuring the cyclist's sleep, nutrition, putting rubbing alcohol on the tires for better traction and grip. There were a lot more things that he did, but how did that turn out? Well, you can see right here, it was no small matter. Now, the second concept I'd like to introduce, habits. Is this something that your brain kind of does to adapt. It adapts, but it doesn't necessarily adapt for the better or for the worse. It just adapts. Makes whatever you do often, whatever it thinks you do often, easier. That's what a habit is. So that also answers how it's formed, but that's not really helpful. So let's start with why. Well, 43 to 90% of your daily actions are habit-driven. Habit-driven, so that means it's the same action, same time, same place over the course for a while. And your willpower, you can fatigue. And this matters because let's say if there is anything that requires a little bit of extra mental effort, you want to be able to be fresh so that you can start working on these habits, given that they take up pretty much almost all your day, or at least about half. But there's a caveat. You can also exercise it. You can also recover between when you exercise or fatigue your willpower. And that's pretty neat. All that matters is that whatever you're doing, whatever it is that you're thinking of, it just gets you doing something that is helpful. But FYI, muscles, habits act very similarly. The fun fact of the day is, drumroll please.
Your muscles have a certain memory, if we can call it that.
Is that true? That
Very
muscle
true.
memory thing?
Oh, yeah. However long it took you to gain the muscles initially, it's going to take you an order of magnitude, a factor of 10-ish or so less time to get it back.
That's pretty impressive. I'd say so myself. So, little fun fact for you. Now, intermission's over. Second concept, priority. And aiming high. Why is having an aim important? And then therefore, what should you aim at? In the case of getting out of a rut, why is having an aim important? An aim kind of acts like if you think about a map, it's a goalpost. And you know that if you go in this direction, that doesn't help you, in that direction, that doesn't help you. There's a lot of directions that won't help, unless it's the only route. You want to go right here, right there. So that means any step you take, you can measure it, how closer to or farther from the goal it gets you. That's very helpful. Another thing as well, if you aim high, and I would very much recommend you aim high, and let's say you aim for the stars, hey, if you miss it, you land on the moon, right? I think that is no small matter. So, in this case, what should you aim at if you're trying to get out of a rut? Well, good eating and sleeping. That might have been kind of obvious. It probably wouldn't have surprised most of you. To clarify and to be precise, it's because it gives you energy. You are what you eat, and you feel like how you slept, if that makes sense. I guess I kind of just did the same thing twice. Whatever the case, they are your bedrock. If you don't have energy to think, if you don't have energy to have good emotional regulation of the thinking that you can do, it's sort of clouded a little bit. And external factors, the feelings, stresses, voices, everyone else, everything on the outside can affect you a little bit more easily. Try to start eating a little bit better, sleeping a little bit well. And you probably are trying. And I'm not saying what you're doing isn't good enough, but back with the aim higher than what you're trying to do. Because you're probably going to land short of that and aim unintentionally where exactly you want it to be. You need to be able to think. You need to be able to have your mental energy, and you need to be able to be fresh to decide and process the things that need processing, things that are calling to your attention, because you don't deserve this. That man or woman in the mirror is the only person who's ever going to be by your side forever. He or she is never going to leave you. So, give that person energy. Eat and sleep well. How do you do that? Eating. Here's something I found to be especially useful. It kind of sucks because I didn't know how to cook, but it worked for me. Maybe it'll work for you. Try a frozen vegetable mix. Not when it's still frozen. Boil it, saute it, fry it, bake it, toast it, microwave it, whatever. You can do a lot with it. It might not taste the best, but it's okay. Just take a handful, maybe eat it first so you have the good stuff at the end. Sauce it up. You don't need to learn how to season now. You can learn how to season later. All that does is that you make yourself a little bit more full from something that's nutritious, so that you eat a little bit less of something that isn't as nutritious. And it makes it a little bit easier to do. They're cheap too. Sleeping. Aim for 9 hours. Hell, why not aim for 9 hours? Here's something simple that, not easy, but simple and maybe the easiest thing that you could do. Coffee Put it on a desk on the opposite side of the room where you're going to put your phone, I'm assuming your alarm's on your phone, inside of that desk behind some books or something. In other words, make it harder to reach and put a caffeine source there. What does that do? Getting up, you don't switch off the phone on autopilot. So you can get up and you can not go back to sleep, and that makes it harder for you to go back to sleep. The other thing, a cup of joe, should you need it, because some people might not, but if you do, then it'll help the staying awake part a bit easier, give you a little bit of a kick, just to make it a little bit easier for you to stop forming that good habit. But there's a slight caveat. Caffeine, little nuanced discussion. If you can stay up without it, go without it. And you're probably going to have an afternoon crash though if you have it right away when you wake up, which is fine, because you could have another cup, as long as it's whatever your last cup is, it's before 2 p.m. So it doesn't affect your sleep when you finally get to bed. Trust me, it's very demoralizing when you survive for the whole day and then you just can't sleep and you start the cycle again. So if you're still in high school, just forgo it completely, because the staying up power from after you immediately get out of bed, the school commitment's the thing that pulls you towards it. So you probably don't need it as much. And if you can avoid it, that's great. Why might you avoid caffeine? Well, it can give some people anxiety. It might raise your blood pressure to an uncomfortable amount, and you could form a mild chemical dependence, getting headaches, withdrawal symptoms. Now, generally speaking, I would say avoid energy drinks, but not for anything else other than the fact that it's kind of more attractive. You know what I mean? It's kind of nice to look at the different colors, and it does taste a little bit nice. It makes it a little bit easier to fall out of moderation. But otherwise, now here's the thing with caffeine. It's not all bad. I mean, it's a stimulant, right? Stimulant. The point of it, really, it's not really the point, but what we found to be the most useful thing about it is that it can increase focus, your alertness, and reduce your appetite. Though you shouldn't have it specifically just for that. Remember, this isn't medical advice. If you have it in moderation, it's cool. So for example, less than 1 gram of caffeine for the whole day. Take breaks between it. Work up to it. And again, if it gives you a chronically high blood pressure, keep away from it. But let's say you have it responsibly, then go for it. Well, those were the 3 concepts I found to be the most useful for helping myself climb out of ruts. I'd say I'm kind of seasoned at this point. Though to be fair, the question of why I'm getting in them so often in the past is probably worth answering too. Perhaps I may answer it in a future video. Anyway, YouTube is holding me at gunpoint to recommend you this video for some reason, and you have to do it. Please.